All right, all of you freedom-loving boys and girls, whomever you are, whatever kind of car you drive, welcome to Centerline Systems. This is going to be a very different loadout. It's going to be more of a conversation. We're going to talk about everyday carry, but more importantly, we're going to talk about situational awareness. You can already see one of our good friends is here. He's been on before. We'll get to the introductions in a second. Don't really have a whole lot of housekeeping, except to say that the live stream for CLS After Dark on Thursday is going to be tweaked. And the title of that is They Hate You. And some of that will probably come out, but I don't want to do Thursday's live stream today. But so we're going to talk about gear, everyday carry. But more importantly, we're going to kind of like in a very serious nature, wrap that into where we are in this just absolutely bat bleeping crazy world that we're living in right now, where people are attacking and destroying people's property or physically attacking them simply because of how you voted or the perception of how you voted, or that you like tomatoes, or, you know, your favorite color is orange. I mean, what a bad word to use, but this is where we are. And I just, and I know this here, my last kind of comment, and then we'll kind of, we'll bring it over to Patrick, introduce him, and then I'm going to go to people's comments in the chat. But I know this is a difficult podcast for me. Recently I've had people saying, Mark, you're being political. Don't be political. Like, I don't think there's anything political about what I've done, whether on Centerline or the live stream or even in the past stuff that we've done. I've felt it's been pretty adult table conversations. You can have your own opinion. I can have my opinion. We can sit and talk about it. We've tried to share lots of information, share our experiences, the training that you great men and women paid for with your tax dollars for me to receive, trying to give that back. Some people think it's whining. Some people think it's crying. I don't know what to say to you on that. Like if you think trying to hold your government responsible or having an equal, just system of justice, if that's whingy or crying to you, then yeah, I guess you do you, man. But so tonight, probably going to get some people a little pissed off. Not my intention at all. My intention is for myself and my guest, Patrick, to have a very honest conversation with you about gear. And maybe you don't want to hear it, about gear and you maintaining your situational awareness so you don't become a victim. Because I don't care about your politics. I don't care if you voted for the other guy. That's not the point. If we're adults, and as Patrick always says, if you love freedom, I love you. And that's the case here. I want to make sure that you get home so you can have a good time in the weekend with your family, maybe using our gear, but that isn't really the point of tonight, right? But it's so you can take a step back, realize that the world is crazy. Everybody always wants to talk about America, the three things, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. There's only one of those things that's ever guaranteed to you, and that's the pursuit of happiness, because only you can stop pursuing happiness in your brain. None of that other stuff in life is ever granted to anybody, right? So there's no guarantee of life and there's no guarantee of liberty. The only thing you can do is keep this thing ticking, in a kind of Brazil clockwork orange, kind of just I'm in a happy place moment. So, so strap in, pour yourself an adult beverage. We're going to have an adult conversation. Again, we're going to talk about gear and situational awareness. And I guess my last comment, if you think I'm being political and you don't want to do business with me, Centerline Systems, because I think it's crazy that people are attacking and destroying people's property and threatening them with violence. Look, you're a piece of shit if that's what you're doing. I mean, plain and simple. Minimum level, you're a piece of shit. And I don't care if you do business with me. Maximum, and I hope this happens because we're having a bunch of the FAFOs going on right now. You're now a criminal and potentially a felon. And that makes you just another type of, another type of crazy. So anyway, on that note, P-Rick, bring us on in. Everybody's seen you before, but you know the deal. We always like to be polite. Give us a little bit about your background, and then I'll read comments, and we'll just jump right into it, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back. Yeah, I've been on here several times, but if there's any first-time listener viewers, my name's Patrick. Grew up in the Marine Corps, moved on, got into law enforcement. Throughout a law enforcement career, I was able to work patrol, narcotics, SWAT, all the fun stuff. Moved on, came back in the military after 9/11, met Mark. Prior to going to CIA, I was a CIA officer for 7.5 years. Left that to save the family because it's a little bit harsh on a family lifestyle. So came back, to the wonderful United States, and currently working for the Department of Homeland Security. So therein lies my disclaimer cue, is that anything that I say on this podcast is my opinion alone, and does not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Homeland Security or the Defense Department or the CIA.
Right on. And I'm not a part of any of those things anymore. So my views are just my views. And if you don't like them, then, jump in the chat or come on as a guest and we can debate it as adults, prove me wrong, like, just don't do it based on like random emotion. Like nothing we're going to talk about here is emotion, so here, before we get into it, P. Rick, I had, this has come up like, the cope, right? The what about isms, and it's like, well, what about, conservatives protesting Bud Light? And I'm like, that's your argument. That's going to be your justification. I don't recall seeing any stories about conservatives like physically assaulting like a Bud Light distribution center or individuals walking out of a liquor store with it. What I remember is conservatives, whatever you want to call them, went out and bought Bud Light with their own money, which puts money into Bud Lights, so like that wasn't the point. They could have just boycotted it, but they went out and spent their money thereby giving Bud Light their money. And then they took home their private property and then they destroyed it. We'll get into this more on Thursday, just the illogic of what's even going on, which is the reason we wanted to do tonight, because in my humble opinion, it shows a certain level of a mental fragility or a mental decay or a decline, however you want to phrase it. But there are people who are willing to do violence against you, boys and girls, simply because of the car you drive. We'll get into the madness of that, on Thursday. Today, we're going to actually focus on the gear, and Patrick and I are going to share some of our training, again, the training that was provided to us by you great men and women through your tax dollars and our real world experiences. And then hopefully, hopefully no one ever has to take it to heart. But if there's one thing you can put in your hip pocket tonight, and if that can make a difference for one person out there, then I'm happy. And I think the job is done then. Because that's our intent. Let's do some comments here. P. Rick, you got anything you want to add before I just read some comments?
No, go ahead. I'm ready to go. I think however we address the comments or whichever direction we want to go, I think we're kind of set up for success already.
Okay. As always, though, I just want to say hi to everybody. Thanks for you guys being here and taking the time out of your life. We got a big woo from Gene. We got I'm second with a big woo for Dan and a little laughter. Henry Ben, we got another Minnesotan in the house. We got Snowshoe checking in from Minnesota or Michigan, excuse me. And then Gene saying hello to everybody. Gene has a question. How many days, my friend? I'm not sure what that is, Gene. You can maybe give us a little update on that. But there it is. Comments were kind of caught up. So again, just look at the world around you. And you hate being right. I really do mean to say this. I hate being right. And I've unfortunately been right too many times about these type of things in my personal experience. And that doesn't make me, Karnak the magician or a crystal ball. It's just common sense. You just look around you and read the room, right? And look at what's happening around you. Like, no, there's going to be a revolution here, or no, all the children have left the village. We're getting set up for an ambush, or, hey, why is that guy honking at me and then swerving in front of me and then slamming on his brakes? Well, there's about to be an altercation. So we're taking it from that kind of perspective. And then we just got Quest Views that just joined the house too, right? So, hey, great to see you over here, Quest Views. Thanks for joining in. But so we're going to look at it that way. And then, so maybe at the basic level, I'm going to first turn it over to Patrick, because I think so before I do, I'm sorry, let me go back a second. So myself, Patrick, Blake, Redbeard, Quest Views, some of the guys that we've had on, Better Call Paul, we've done these videos. So go back to either the Millstone Self-Reliance Group, all the way back to Mission Critical with me and Redbeard, or just even here on Centerline, where we've done these longer form videos and we've taught them as classes. Tonight, we're not teaching a class. We're going to kind of hit on some bullet points to remind you that. I would beseech you, go back, either look at our videos, or use the internet while you still can, and go out and watch some of these videos on situational awareness, how to get off the X. But these are some of the terms we're going to use here. So I kind of want to start off with Patrick. Let's talk about color codes of awareness. And if you want to call it I call it concentric rings of security. Other people call it the Tueler drill, but this is going to really come into play as we start talking about a little bit more tonight. P. Rick, do you want to kind of just start it off right there with
Yeah,
that and just kind of get it going there?
Sure, I'll dive in. So, first off, I mean, coming from like a lot of years of government service, I think a lot of folks on the that are either out of the military, out of the government, or just never were in those communities think, hey, this is something I can't attain, this, that, and the other, and that's absolutely not the case. As a matter of fact, even if you were trained at the highest level, if you let everything atrophy and go away, perishability is a thing. So if you don't practice, whether it's shooting, whether it's your physical fitness, whether it's even your mental sharpness, your awareness, that type of thing, it'll go away, and you'll fall into the same boat as everybody else, right? So I think what the most valuable thing is we're going to talk about tonight is like viable practical tools and concepts that everybody can use and everybody needs to use on a regular basis, because number one, it really sharpens your OODA loop. We'll talk about OODA loop. I'll talk about it right now. So OODA loop was created by Colonel John Boyd, Air Force pilot. He was I think he was a Korean War fighter pilot ace. Did really well over there, so well that they said, hey, we're going to bring Colonel Boyd in, have him teach the Air Force version of Top Gun. And basically they took all the cool parts from Top Gun, the movies, and it drew from Colonel Boyd's life, right? So they put him up against inferior aircraft, or like one or two students, like best student, and then he'd win. 2 students, he'd still win. 3 students, he'd still win. Okay, let's put 3 students, our best students, up against him while he's in an inferior aircraft. He still wins. How did this happen? He said, I decide faster. So OODA is observe. So you see things. I like to, when I'm teaching classes, I like to use this comparison. Like if you're driving, a vehicle, which everybody does, you see the stoplight. Hey, you've observed it. Now that stoplight turns yellow. Now you're orienting your thinking to it. Hey, is that a fresh yellow? Is that a stale yellow? Is it about to turn? And then your decision then becomes based off of that. And you decide to either, hey, I'm going to hit the brake or the skinny pedal on the right and power through. And that's your action, right? So Colonel Boyd said, hey, I reach a decision point faster. And therefore I'm able to act faster. Because he's already used to the orientation of the aircraft. But we do this stuff every single day. It's just a matter of whether or not we're switched on and people are practicing awareness and observation. To me, that's the number one thing, because despite, my level of training, Mark, your level of training, if we switch off and get into the, hey, I'm staring at my phone, I'm staring at this little rectangular device and my attention's all here versus what's going on around me, I'm way behind the power curve, right? So that's why there's so many car accidents now too, is people are staring down at the phone, trying to hide it from law enforcement, not realizing they'd probably be safer to hold it up high so they can see what's going on the road while they're looking at the phone. So, but awareness and observation is your number one, skill that anybody can practice, and it needs to be practiced. Also becoming a people watcher. Who's around you? How are they behaving? What are the anomalies? And if there's something that looks threatening that I can avoid and go around, well, why wouldn't I do that? So I'll leave it there for a second. That's like the kickoff, I think.
It's a good kickoff. And again, the decision-making process, the speed by which, training yourself. Again, yeah, it's awesome to get put through these type of courses, at the highest levels, where there's tons of resources. I really probably honed more of these skills. And to Patrick's point, when I was just stationed in Germany, or I vacationed in Germany, or I had a chance to be in an American city that was a little bit more like, look, Europe, no offense, but I like America. But there are things about Europe I really like. Outdoor cafes, just person watching, and then to Patrick's point, you don't realize it, but you're actually practicing a skill. You're looking at people, you're making observations. Yeah, you're judging books by color, but I used to play a game called, this is back in the day. I don't know. Hey, Germany, excuse me right now, but back in the day, lots of people from Germany wore red pants. I don't know, man. I don't know what it was, but I'd be like, yeah, I bet that guy's from Germany. I'd be in DC or something like that. I bet that guy's from Germany, and in diesem Moment, ich habe vergessen meine Deutsch, but I used to speak pretty decent German. I'd maybe go say something, and then like 9 out of 10 times that person was German. So you start observing and you start seeing patterns. I did a ride along with our local police department years ago. One of the guys who was on that department, actually, I'd been in the military with a long time ago. and, discovered him here. We reconnected, did a ride along with him. And we were offset in an alley once watching a very busy, popular bar part of town where there was a bunch of bars. And I'm like, hey, check out that guy in the doorway. And, and he saw him too, but then we sat and observed it. This was a predator. This was a person back in the shadows a little bit, hanging out in a doorway, just watching all the patrons, people coming in and out of the bar, looking for the right person to be totally, like Patrick just said, down in their phone, in their bed, too drunk. He was looking for that opportunity to find somebody who had no situational awareness and who was operating in what we'll call the white, right? And we'll get into that a little bit. But I just wanted to throw that out to Patrick's point, because this is serious. This is something that you can do every day. And most of us actually do it, and we probably don't know it. So welcome to the club. The water's warm. Patrick?
Yeah, 100%. So, you want to kick off the color code. So, this was devised by.
Actually, if you don't mind, I want to go back to OODA loop just real quickly.
Okay.
Because it isn't just, it is as simple as I make a decision faster, but there's a little bit more to that. And this is going to pertain tonight and for Thursday for people who might find themselves in a dangerous situation out in public. It's, don't be afraid to give yourself, to make that decision. And even if it's a bad decision, often that is going to be better, not a bad decision like I'm going to run this kid over, but I'm going to tell a story about that tonight. But you've got to make a decision, right? So, Patrick, can you just expound just a tad more?
100%.
It isn't just because he was better,
right? No, he was already used to, he already observed the formations where they were at in space, right? So his spatial awareness was outstanding at this point, which is why he was still alive after everything he'd done, right? Just even flying aircraft that fast and that radical is a skill in and of itself that takes a physical toll. So he was so used to that. And then, putting himself in the position where he was going to be dominant, that's what his decision was. Let me put myself in the dominant position first. Let me beat you to, I guess it would be like the aerial version of point of domination for any of the folks that, actually have a CQB background out there that listen to this type of stuff. So, he was excellent at that. But the carryover comes to, like I said, day-to-day applicability. Your awareness and observation is your number one skill, because without that, how can you really orient your thinking to, hey, what's this person doing? I was a police officer, and one of the things that we used to do on a regular basis was watch officer safety videos, and it was usually something that went bad that we were supposed to learn from. Well, if you're watching, in a lot of these were state trooper videos, because a lot of stuff happens to state troopers. I would never want to be one of those guys. God bless them. But you're out there alone. Eventually complacency takes hold, because you make traffic stops all day long. And if, 98% of the time nothing happens, that 2% where something is going to happen and it's lethal, you're already behind the power curve. So, but anyway, back to the scenario, watching that as a law enforcement officer, a lot of my colleagues would, hey, we're making fun of, well, that's why this went bad, because this officer didn't do this, or the officer didn't do that. That's great, but you're not learning you're not taking the advantage of that scenario by watching the would-be bad guy. That's how you learn how humans, bring violence suddenly and take advantage of somebody's lack of attention or lack of awareness, right? Or if they're even dialed in. That's where you learn. That's something that any single person that's listening or watching can take to heart and say, hey, look, let me study how humans act violently, whether it's the riots, whether it's a bar fight, whether if it's a after school fight. Because I'll tell you, I've never seen in my entire adult life two people decide, hey, you know what, you're hitting on my girl, so let's walk to the back, throw on some 16-ounce gloves. We've got a couple of cornermen here and a ref. That's just not reality. So a lot of people that go into the sport realm mentality, not to say that those people aren't talented, but that's not how actual violence happens. So that awareness piece and being dialed in and be able to assess things accurately is important, because when you start doing that, you also start to, by watching people, simple thing that I like to advocate for is when you're walking around in public, looking at people in the face. How many people have lost the ability to look back at someone in the face and give them the head nod or the little wink or whatever, right? People, a lot of times, and I work in and around big cities all the time, they automatically look down and away. Like that, just looking at someone square on the face is almost like a sign of aggression when it's not. Even if you get a smile on your face, but I'm telling you, get used to practicing that. That's the first step in awareness. And if you think about someone who intends to do violence, by you looking at them that way, it says, "Hey, I'm paying attention to you." So you're going to lose the element of surprise if you're going to do something, right? So we can talk about surprise, speed, violence of action stuff a little bit later. But if you give up or take away somebody's surprise element, your survivability and advantage in that situation goes way up just by looking at people.
And that's why I kind of wanted you to get back into it, because it goes back to situational awareness. It goes back into your ability to give yourself permission to defend yourself or your family. It gives you, with training, the knowledge of how to turn it, flip the switch, get up to 10, flip it, bring it back down to 2. I mean, but you can see this and you can practice this stuff every day. And I was glad you brought those things up. I mean, eye contact is just a huge one. And I don't know how many stories we'll get into here about, things that I'm sure everybody, watching, whether it's, with us live or on demand, are going to think about all these different scenarios where they've seen where like I was doing a military thing and we were in civilian clothes and I'm going to dance around this a little bit. Me and this other guy were just observing an area while some other people were actually conducting this exercise, and it's out in public. And, I'd never worked with this guy before. Although kind of interestingly, we may have been we were pretty sure we were in the same, reserve infantry unit way back in the day, or the battalion anyway. But we just watched this one lady, and maybe this will be a way to segue into what we're getting in here. We're in a parking lot. She's exiting the store. She's immediately on her key fob, unlocking her car, which her car was probably 30 yards away still. And walking down that. So now the car is unlocked. It's announced to everybody in the parking lot had somebody wanted to do her wrong, where she was going. So they knew the X, they knew where to intercept her, to set up ambush, whatever. And then when she got to her vehicle, no looking, no left or right, no nothing, just head first into the back of the vehicle, totally. And we both looked at each other and said, how easy it would be to just kidnap or rob her right now. And and I said that to him, and he was thinking the same thing, because we were both observing it. So, to Patrick's point, man, you have to be paying attention right now, because that is, what your adversary is looking for, and whether that's a criminal, who I just saw a stupid video on Twitter or X the other day, a pizza guy, or a DoorDash or whatever it was. He comes rolling up and there was 2 guys lingering at the corner, and they were eyeballing him the whole time he came in, saw the DoorDash or Uber Eats. He gets out of his vehicle, doesn't pay them any attention, even though he just drove right by him, doesn't pay him any attention, leaves his vehicle unlocked, goes up to the door. One guy stalls him at the door and starts verbally talking to him to distract him. The other guy's inside of his vehicle grabbing food. The guy, is asking, well, what are you carrying? And the guy's like, I'm not taking this out of the bag. It's for these people. And he's like, well, I just want to see it, and then the guy does it. And the guy just grabs all the stuff and they all take off running. To me, there couldn't have been a more clear-cut case of and to Patrick's point, I want to just give that over back to you. Had that been anything even more nefarious than just stealing that food, and, they could have stole his car, they could have stole his life, et cetera, et cetera. And that guy was totally in the white, flat-footed. So even when your brain, he started to realize that he was so many decision points behind the 8 ball, I don't care who you are, Audie Murphy, John Wayne, there's not a damn thing you could have dany about it. P. Rick, you want to do that? And let's kind of use that as a segue into situational awareness and color codes of awareness.
Yeah. Anybody that's there's a lot of high risk, professions out there. I would say that anybody that especially delivers Uber Eats, or hell, just drives people in Uber or Lyft or whatever, that's dangerous stuff. And a lot of those folks, they don't have any training. It's they're just doing that for extra money on the side. And, they might get a 6th sense, but, by the time they get the 6th sense, the person's already in the vehicle. People might be around there. I mean, what a perfect ambush that would be, right? You order food to some location. Hey, I'm going to pick the food up here. And then you just ambush the guy. You could take the food, you could take his vehicle, you could take anything you want to. If it's in a bad neighborhood. I mean, the question is, and I always warn these people when I'm, talking to them, like, hey, do you ever go into any bad areas? Do you have the ability to say, hey, I'm not going to make this pickup, or I'm not going to make this delivery? that's horrible. Another group of people too that I think I know that a lot of folks understand this, but real estate agents. You're going, you're showing a strange property to some person that you don't really know. And I don't even think you have to provide any real ID in order to do this. I mean, and a lot of these are women. And this is very, it's a very high risk thing. So that awareness piece is big. For everybody else, though, when we're talking about, the awareness, right? So Colonel Cooper, Jeff Cooper, I think he was a Marine back in Vietnam era. He came up with the concept of codes of awareness, and it was a color code. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but like white is like, hey, you're in the white, and Mark's made reference to that's you're at home. Hey, you're a couple beers in, you're watching a ball game, you're completely switched off. And you guess what? We all need that. We're by no means are we advocating that like you need to stay in like this hyper vigilant state at all times, because that's just not sustainable, right? But that's like your complete like unaware, just at rest mode. The next step up is condition yellow, which is saying, hey, look, you know what? I'm kind of like paying attention to my environment. At least I'm watching what's going on. If you're outside in public, that's kind of where you should be. And that's the danger of these guys, is they take that away. It's like, oh, I can go hide inside my phone and I don't have to look at the scary things around me. Well, by not looking at the scary things around you or being aware of those things, you're way behind the power curve, and you're allowing those things to have an advantage on you. You're offering them the element of surprise. So there's yellow. Orange is now, hey, guess what? We're starting to pick up that there is something there. There is some type of threat there. I don't know what, but this doesn't seem right. And now the hairs on the back of your neck are starting to say, hey, let's assess this a little bit further. When it gets to red, the fight's on. That's when, hey, we're in a no shit. Fight or flight. I'm trying to run, but there's a definite, threat to my life or people around me, that their lives. And then there's also, I think there was a condition black as well. That's where things have gone like really, really bad. And like, you don't have control of your body anymore, because you're at such a high heart rate and adrenaline dump and everything else. That's next to like, hey, like the fight is on to the death, and this is where we're at. So some people can lose consciousness or physical ability in that code. So am I off on that with that black?
We kind of just stayed away from it, but you're absolutely right. But because that's, when we talk about gross motor skills, that's when, your decision-making process, you really have gone into just like berserker rage mode, yeah. But that's not necessarily a good thing. Right. And oftentimes, you're either going to just go immediately there, or you're going to be dead because you skipped all those other steps. And that's kind of why I wanted just to bring that up real quickly. When we're talking about Tesla drivers, hey, and we'll get into a little bit more, about Sentry mode and just how to, your cameras. You guys, if you own a Tesla, you should already know this stuff. But, that's all good for after the fact, for winning it in the case of law. I want to make sure you win it in the street and you make it home safely, right? So you're driving the vehicle. Yeah, they're awesome. They're really fast, the whole self-autopilot, all that kind of crap. But you're driving a vehicle and you should be in the yellow, right? I mean, you should be paying attention. There's cars around, you're Minnesota. There's deer, bear, skunk, raccoons, everything runs out in the roads in front of you, moose sometimes, depending where you live. So you got to be paying attention. So you should always be in that yellow. But, and I'm just going to play a quick video here, and then maybe use this as a segue to, we're going to get to the gear too, but, Patrick already said some things. I'm going to come back to it. Let me just show you this real quickly. And you guys, and by no means are we picking on this person in the video. Like, we have to be adult, we have to be realistic, and this is how we have lessons learned, right? Unfortunately, as Patrick talked about, when you're studying and looking at personal defense or officer safety, the point isn't to be gory or graphic or to pat yourself on the back. It's lessons learned, right? So you can figure out how to avoid it and not be the victim yourself next time. So give me a second here. And let me just kind of come back to make sure what our view is. Okay, P-Rick, I'm not even going to play this. I'm sure everybody has seen this video. All right. What I want to talk about here is and if anyone doesn't know the video, I can play it for a little bit. But this individual in the car, has been following behind this individual driving a Tesla, honking at them, being, behaving erratically, behaving like, very aggressive, very violent. And then if you go and see the whole video, you'll see how they cut around him. You can see it's a double yellow. So again, your yellow should have immediately went to orange. Why is this guy honking at me? And then the moment he passes you and you double yellow and then gets in front of you, you should have been at red, right? So woulda, coulda, shouldas. We're not picking on anybody here. The video, actually, if you watch the rest of the video, it gets even worse. But this is what we're kind of talking about right here, and I just wanted to throw that in there.
Hey, Mark, can you play that?
Sure. I guess I can play it. Yeah. Give me a sec. It's from a news report, so it's not going to be the raw footage. So here we go.
Angry because she's driving a Tesla.
I was thankfully by myself.
Lee was on the way to a doctor's appointment.
And so there's different versions. Was that enough, Patrick?
Yeah, so he just cut in front of her because she was driving a Tesla. Is that it?
He was driving very aggressively behind her, and let me just do this real quickly. He was very aggressive behind her, honking, swerving, trying to get her attention. Cuts across the double yellow, gets in front of her. So again, it's all over the internet. Gets in front of her, hits his brakes, forces her to stop. And we're going to get into some things that you can do in your vehicle because, as Patrick's already pointed out, the color codes of awareness, a lot of us go into white at home. Well, if you're in the white, you better either have a battle buddy or you better be using technology so you can go from the white, because you got to be in the white. I mean, just period. But, you have to rely on your technology to bring you into the yellow or the orange relatively quickly, because where do most crimes happen? And as we were seeing, if you drive a Tesla, there's a lot of crimes and hatred being thrown your way just for being a Tesla. So every time you get into your vehicle, man, you need to be in the yellow, if not the orange. I mean, you're like a moving target at that point in time. And, people are aggressing people. I mean, just right before we went live, and I don't know the whole story, so just take this with a grain of salt. I just know this was the headline that there were explosive devices found at a Tesla dealership in Texas someplace. Now, I don't know the whole story. That was happening just before I was getting set up for everything here. But we've already seen this level of violence and vitriol directed against people. So you're just driving in your Tesla, having a great time, because it is a really fast car. They are really fun. I like the whoopee cushion thing, so you can make it so when your guest sits down, it sounds like they're farting. There's all kinds of little bells and whistles. But to Patrick's point, those things can distract us and put us in the white, just like this. And now we're more engaged with the computer screen and all this, as opposed to that guy who's trying to cut you off in traffic. That individual wasn't attacked. Again, it gets worse. Watch the video, go back and watch our videos talking about how to deal with these situations. But like, boys and girls, this is the reality. So, as much as I'd rather just sit and talk about the cool gear, you have to have the gear, but part of the gear is having the mindset, because this has become very real, and it's a sad, horrible freaking day. So P-Rick, sorry, I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, she stops in the middle of the road, allows this guy to get out of the vehicle and aggress upon her. He's wearing a mask. So there's all of these things, back to what Patrick has just said, the OODA loop, your decision-making cycle, your situational awareness, your concentric rings of security. At what point are you going to start taking actions? Because this lady was so behind the eight ball. So let's all learn from that, so it isn't you. And thankfully, she wasn't, accosted. Probably scared the living crap out of her. I'm sure she's probably still having little just bad dreams about it. And no one should have to live that type of life in our society just because of what? Because of a car she's driving. Absolutely mind blowing. But you have to have your head on a swivel in today's day and age. If you voted, apparently if you voted the wrong way, or if you drive the wrong car, you're the clone of baby H, little Hitler. P-Rick, you want to jump in there? I kind of got us a little bit offside, but again, we were focusing on that stop. And I want to get into the vehicle here in a little bit. The vehicle is one of your most powerful tools. I mean, it just, but we'll get into a little bit more of that. But I want to see if you've got anything you want to add to that before we dive into a little bit more specifics. Share some of our experiences in our training that we can, with anybody who watches this, and hopefully, help them, get home safely.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we keep hammering on it, but a lot of people want to say, when we had Steve Tarani on the podcast, we talked about it quite a bit. So I'll kind of reiterate some of that. you think, hey, like, what is the CIA, what are the special operations, what kind of training do their people get it's super cool and high speed? Well, at the core of it all is your awareness and your observation, because without that, that's a basic fundamental skill. And we had the opportunity, and I still do, practice maintaining and mastering the fundamentals, and that's one of them. The second piece that comes with that is mindset. So I fear, that this girl probably didn't have any type of combative mindset, right? So when something like that happened, some sudden violence, fell upon her, she was probably at like a decision gap. Like, I don't know what to do. I've never even thought that this would happen to me type, thing. And this is not like, us up on some soapbox saying, oh, she should have done this. It is what it is, but we can all learn from her situation, right? So the idea of having a mindset that no matter what the situation is, no one has the right, whatever their feelings or political leanings or justification are, to cause harm to me and my property, or to you and your property. No one has that right to lash out and do that, and especially if they're going to cause harm to your physical body. Hey, you know what? It's game on, man. I don't care which side of the fence you're on. We had that inherent right to self-defense. So having the mindset that, hey, I don't care what happens, I'm going home today. I'm going to go home. If it involves me being in an altercation, I hope it doesn't. I don't want it to be, but that's what I'll do to get home. And I will cause extreme damage to someone in order to achieve what that is. I'm not looking for fights. I'm trying to avoid them at all costs. But if it comes to me and it's inescapable, we have to be violent. And in this particular case, like, our training, and Mark and I talked about this before, but it's obvious to us, like, hey, that guy gets out of his vehicle. He's already, kind of been like a marauder on the road, trying to get her to, shift and move and stop her. Now he's out of his vehicle, moving aggressively, wearing a mask, which, I'm sorry, guys, COVID's over.
And a large jacket.
And she's a female. So in law enforcement, we have this term called totality of the circumstance. Could she articulate, hey, I felt like I was in fear for my life for this guy. I don't know what he's doing. I would have driven away. And if that included, like, if he's going to try to stop me with his body, well, he's going to lose against that vehicle. So, that's that's kind of where we're at with it. That vehicle is a weapon, and no one's going to take me out of it, barring a law enforcement officer on a legal stop.
Well, and I just want to emphasize that. And that's one of the key things I wanted to point out today. We'll see how much, we discuss, but look, we are not advocating that you're just running people over because, they're selling you like Shriner tickets at a stop sign. That's not what we're taking. Saying,
want some oranges?
Don't anyone take that out of context. But again, totality of the circumstances, you see everything developing, like looking, like if you have to make your own decisions. I'm here to tell you, though, there are plenty of times where, and again, maybe Patrick and I see it a little differently. Maybe it is a little bit of, there is some aspect of training and the real world scenarios, situations you've been in, but your vehicle, like, you don't ever abandon your vehicle. You don't stop. Like, you abandon your vehicle if you're like, your vehicle's immobilized and, all the tires are blown up or whatever, but this isn't an ambush like that. This isn't, direct action combat. This is a guy who's driving, aggressively, one of the things when I was teaching in class, I used to teach people right there. It's like, there's no need to engage. You're in a vehicle. You can turn left, you can turn right, you can stop, you can back up. But the other thing is you have a phone. Like, you could right then and there be calling 911, taking a picture of the vehicle. So you have the license plate. Now you're in a Tesla. So, you've got technology working for you. But again, that's after the fact. But, like, hey, this guy's aggressive. I know where the local sheriff's department is, or the fire department, or a police station. I'm just going to change my route. There's my decision-making process back to the OODA loop. I'm going to win by doing something that you now have to react to. I'm going to take a left, and I've got this little route. I know how to get there. You're going to have to follow me. And I've got your license plate. I've got you, and I'm on the phone with dispatch, letting them know I'm coming to their location. And there's this guy following behind me, intending me harm. So that, to me, was like one of the big takeaways. And if you stop on the X like that, and Patrick, I just want to get this out, because this is one of the main points I wanted to talk about, and I'll get it back over to you. But if you do stop on the X like that, because maybe in your brain, you're like, maybe this person's having a child, or a medical issue and needs some help. and you stop. Maybe that's where your brain goes. But the moment you see that person get out and start aggressing you, and if you look at it, dude, you're in a car, and we're not going to, again, I'm not advocating you use your car as a weapon, but it's very easy to do, right? And, go back and see some of our other videos, and there's certain distances you should always be, when you stop behind a vehicle, you always want to be so far back. We used to always just say just so you could see their full rear bumper with, over the front of your car, right? So, there's not just the hood of your car and then the rear of theirs. You can see the whole hood of your car and their whole rear bumper, because that gives you enough room to create momentum and maneuver so your vehicle can just push their vehicle out of the way and you can escape. One option. She had plenty of room to the right. It looks like it's a 2-lane on the other side, which would mean like a passing lane on the other side. Hey, if there wasn't oncoming traffic, go in there or go around them to the right. Or you know what? If there's a shoulder in your side, throw it in reverse and get on the shoulder and just drive backwards. How many people have practiced driving backwards? Again, just like there's skills, there's things that we all each can be doing. And you might be like, I'm a horrible parallel parker. Well, if you live in an area where vehicles are targeted, because the reality is criminal elements are going to target you in only in a handful of places. Just look at the crime stats. It's usually in your house, in your vehicle, and then something to do with your vehicle, either the grocery store on the way home or the mall on the way home, or the office on the way home. But in a lot of that, your vehicle is a main part of it. Man, you got to start learning how to use that vehicle as the tool it is really designed for your personal safety. Great, Sentry mode. And then just when you're sitting in your car, you can be operating those cameras, and that's like having 360-degree security. Use it, utilize it. Don't let somebody suddenly sneak up and there they are in your window, your driver's side window, your passenger window, and you didn't know they were approaching the vehicle. That vehicle has the technology that would prevent that from ever happening. So use it. Rick, do you want to get into any of that at all?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Everything comes down to mindset with this. I know that's an overused term, but you don't want to use the vehicle as a weapon, but understand that under the right set of circumstances, it is a weapon. So you've got to allow yourself, under the right set of circumstances, I will use it, right? Like if I was facing a mob of people and they were they're flipping cars, burning cars, it's the riots of 2021, or maybe the ones in the future, right? I'm not going to stop and become a victim of the marauding, group. I'm going to, exit that. I'm going to get off the exits any way I can, and I'm not going to exit the vehicle. So if that equates to me, running people over, they're trying to maraud, so be it. I'll deal with the consequences later, but I can articulate the actions that I took, so we'll go from that. Not trying to advocate, hey, go get crazy, but don't take any option off the table. And I think that's the one thing that, a lot of folks that, haven't had, the experiences we've had, or others on the military or special operations side, that you can embrace, right? You mentioned parallel parking. Hey, go practice parallel parking. It's the vehicle is a weapon. Learn how to wield it in an effective way. It's not just, what I take when I'm going to Walmart to work, or, the grocery store or whatever. It is a weapon. So, treat it as such. Learn how to master it. Practice backing up, get some cones, go to a school parking lot, an empty parking lot sometime. Practice, hey, how fast could I do this? How effective am I? How many cones am I hitting? These are simple tactics, but I mean, I guarantee you, probably 99% of the population doesn't think about it, but it's easily achievable.
And they pay huge dividends.
Yeah,
huge dividends. Just even basic little stuff like that. Learning how to turn properly. Accelerate. Decelerate. What your vehicle does under speed. Your vehicle. It's a coin. I don't know. It is a tool. It's a combat multiplier, and it can be used in the offense and the defense. So realize its skill sets and what you can do. No offense to anybody out there. Yeah, you don't want to smash, your really expensive Tesla, but if you had to, smash through a vehicle again, that and go back, see some of our other videos, and the point isn't to teach you how to do this right now, but it's to remind you that your vehicle can push other vehicles. There's different techniques. Some work better than others, front end, rear end, things of that nature, trying to push an engine block, trying to push the rear, axle, completely different things, assuming that the engine's in the front of the vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. But if you just have, you'd be surprised, boys and girls, it doesn't take a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of, get up and go. And your vehicle, just the power in and of by itself can move a vehicle enough at just really low speeds to give you that escape path, that room to get the hell out of there and get off the X. And that's what it's all about. Yep, you're going to do damage to your Tesla. That really sucks, and it's your vehicle and you've been working your ass off to be able to afford it and maintain it. And now because of some deranged lunatic, simply because of the car you drive, you have to implement and make these decisions. Yeah, I mean, but be prepared and start thinking about mentally, and if you have children, you have a spouse, whomever it is, and then think about your routes. I guess this is going to be the last thing I want to talk about on the vehicle side, Patrick, and I'll throw it back over to you because, this is already going a little bit longer. We're going to go a little bit over, but I do want to talk about your house and I want to talk about gear. Again, before I go do the gear, just go back and see some of the F-Kit videos that we've done on the Millstone Mondays here on Centerline and other things, even like with Gimli, talking about loadouts for different pieces of gear. There's a kit that's on your body. There's a kit that can be in your car. And then there's a kit that can be in your office or at your home, right? And think about your minimum requirements for each of those things. But now going back into the vehicle, again, I don't know if we'll really rehash the kit part and the gear. But the other part of that vehicle is, driving to and from work or the grocery store, go back and see our videos we've done talking about surveillance detection and how to do surveillance detection routes and altering your routes and, just the situational awareness. Can you see your car from anywhere in your house, an upstairs window, a kitchen window, the entryway to your house before you actually go to the outside? Is the path between your house, your door, and your vehicle, are there ambush locations? Are there like a big thing of dumpsters or bushes somebody could be hiding by? Do you have the ability to illuminate that or neutralize that? Again, you want to be able to see that threat and be able to assess it from as great of a distance as possible. That gives you way more time in your OODA loop to start making a decision. And the decision might just be back to the vehicles, and I'll shut up and give it to Patrick, or just at your house. Might just be going back inside and locking the doors. Or it might be, instead of going straight, taking that left, and now you're taking a completely different route, and yeah, you're going to be late for work, but you're going to make it to work. Patrick?
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on the vehicle thing is, if you're worried about getting a ticket or doing damage to your vehicle, that's much more desirable than going to the hospital, right? Or having lifelong injuries and impacts from something that somebody else did, right? I'll take that, I'll take that option, 9 times out of 10, or actually 10 out of 10. So yeah. So just taking away that squeamishness of using violence. So,
because that individual, I mean, I hate to say it, in that little clip, I don't know. And here's the sad thing. It's going to happen. What I'm about to say is going to happen. Somebody's going to F around and find out with the wrong person. Here, I'll just tell a stupid story and then we'll kind of move into either the gear or the home or whatever. So it's only a couple years since I left the agency. I live out in the country, and I think I'd been out for maybe 2 years, 3 years tops at that time. So there's no lights or anything like that. It's just dark country roads. There's lots of deer. So I'm still in my downrange deployment, and I probably still am to some extent today. But as Patrick says, you kind of you got to keep stay in the fight, or otherwise you'll get complacent. But I definitely wasn't complacent even 3 years after leaving it. I'm still doing SDRs even today, but I'm driving on a remote country road, no lights, very dark, very few houses. And out of nowhere, there's suddenly bodies on both sides of the road. It's dark. You're driving 50 miles an hour. I usually don't drive in high beams because I really actually think your low beams and floodlights are better, especially if you're looking in the ditches for deer, but and your fog lights. But anyway, I'm driving and suddenly there's bodies on both sides of the road. Patrick probably already knows what's going through my mind. My mind is a near ambush drill, and I'm in a vehicle. I was just about, my brain started going, turn into one of the groups of turn my vehicle into the group, the bodies, run through them with my vehicle, and the ditch was of such I could get back and then continue escaping. But then, because of my training, my situational awareness, a millisecond, whatever later, my brain realized it was a bunch of kids. And then I hit the brakes, which was still because I didn't know what they were doing. So then I went into hitting the brakes, staying on the X, because I didn't know what these kids were doing. And they were making these gestures. They were pretending to pull a rope across the road. Just kids being kids in the country. When I was a kid, we just threw eggs. I don't know what the hell kids are doing now, and then I got on the brakes, and then a bunch of them scattered, but I caught 2 of them. And I knew one, I knew who his parents were. And I'm like, okay, you guys are coming with me, and I'm trying to come down, because at the end of the day, I could have killed those kids, because that's where I went into a close action drill, right? A combat drill, near ambush. My best tool is my weapon, and I was going to fight my way through that with my vehicle. And then, whatever, thank God, millisecond later, I realized it's a bunch of kids. But then my brain's like, are they pulling a rope across the road? And then I fucking just laid on the brakes, which could have caused an accident, and I could still have injured a child, right? So you just don't know what's going on. And just kind of bringing that back out to what we were talking about, man, this can happen to anyone. And sometimes it can be the most benign, circumstances, and it can be nefarious, like with somebody's actually meaning you harm. So my long story, it's going to happen. One of these people are going to attack the wrong person driving a Tesla, and they are going to use the vehicle as a weapon, or they're going to pull a real weapon, a handgun type of thing out. Somebody's going to be in the dirt here really soon. There's just no way around it right now. If it continues, and especially if now people are implanting explosive devices at Tesla locations, somebody's going to get hurt or killed. And then that's going to flip the switch for some people, and it's going to be game on. Rick.
Yeah. Well, that's called domestic terrorism. So,
terrorism. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm pretty sure that with the new administration, especially Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, I think those people are going to get prosecuted that way too. And they'll go away for the rest of their life, maybe face death penalty, because they're talking about bringing that back in certain circumstances. But anyway, on the gear front, right? So, we talked about, to start off, we kind of, led with the OODA loop and the psychological piece, the color codes of awareness. That's the most important thing, because, the one thing that I like to, highlight with people, and it's the way I was trained. I know, Mark, that's the same thing that you guys were trained on too. You're the weapon. You are the weapon. Like, no matter what. I mean, like, think about the vehicle situation. You're the weapon. You're the one that has to steer and manipulate that weapon into place if you're going to use a vehicle as a weapon. But not being tool dependent, right? I carry a firearm and that's my safety. It's like, no, is it? What if you don't have it? What if it's not available? So we like to talk about, things in terms of, time. Maybe something happens so fast you can't access whatever your favorite, we call it a tool, is, right? So I can't access my firearm. Maybe it's not on my person. We'll talk about that here in a second. What if it's a knife? What if it's, pepper spray, so on and so forth? What if it's not available? That's why I think that, it's worth taking a look at how to use your body as the weapon, because you're always going to have it. You can always get it through, if you travel, you can always get it through TSA or some foreign customs or whatever, right? They're not going to say, hey, those elbows look pretty sharp, man, or those teeth you got there, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to let you in. That's not going to happen, right? So you've always got that stuff with you, so you might as well learn how to use it. But your mind's first, your body's second. And then we start adding in, like, and we use these terms. And Mark, I don't know if you guys use the same thing. You probably did. First line, second line, third line gear. So first line gear would be something like, now we are talking about carrying tools on your person. First line is like, hey, if I have to get out of this vehicle and run for my life or fight or whatever, it's what I have on my body. This is, kind of taking on the everyday carry thing with a lot of folks, but everyday carry can be broken down into these things too. So everyday carry, like on first line, is like, hey, if I have, a knife in my pants, if I have a firearm that I always carry, it's inside the waistband, outside the waistband, whatever. I've got that with me. That's my first line gear. And if you're going to carry anything that, causes other human beings to lose blood, you should, think, hey, if I'm going to use that, they're probably trying to cause me to lose blood. I should probably carry a tourniquet, right? So you should have something like that, on your first line gear. On that note, I'm a big fan of these. For those who've maybe not seen these are called RAT tourniquets, rapid application tourniquets. There's no Velcro on this, like everybody says, hey, the cat is like the best thing. It's the most approved, this, that, and the other. And hey, those things are fine. They absolutely are. But I challenge you, under stress, especially using a firearm, try to put this thing on and see how long, try to put the cat on and see how long it takes you versus this. There's no Velcro. There's a cleat. This little loop right here, opens up. So the other thing with a cat tourniquet, you can it's kind of, it has to be preset. So okay, do I want one for the leg? Do I want one for the arm? Hey, guess what? What if it's a dog? What if it's a child? This thing, there you go. You've got all that and no Velcro to contend with, and all it does is it loops around. It's got this cleat right there, and it secures in.
Yeah, they secure kind of like what people might be familiar with, like a figure 9 carabiner.
Yeah,
that got the self-locking bite on it. Yep.
And this was developed by one of our guys. It was one of our trainers, former SF-18 Delta guy. And hey, the proof's in the pudding. So if you're a doubter, like, oh, I absolutely, have to use this. Nah, hey man, you use what works, and the way that you test if it works is put a pulse ox on your finger to see, hey, does the does it stop the pulse as it's on? How long does it take to do that? It's pretty cool. But anyway, carrying the
just real quickly, I just got to throw out a disclaimer. We're not doctors.
No.
We both have a lot of advanced, combat medicine. But what Patrick just said right there, I mean, the only way you're gonna F that up and blame us is like if you torque it down so tight and then you leave it there for 4 days or he's not saying he's saying you can test the effectiveness if you've got a BP type of little, either a cuff down on your wrist or a finger monitor. That's all he's saying. Don't be a knucklehead and put it on and leave it there all day.
Hey, my arm fell off from your podcast. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know, shouldn't have to be said, but in today's day and age,
you never know, right? So, but anyway, first line gear is what you have on your person and you're going to carry with you. So, a lot of people that want to get Rambo.
Wait, real quickly, on that note, so matter of fact, you do the commentary. I'm just gonna our little belt pouch, our utility pouch, the med kit we make for Jack Black Scout Survival. Because this you may not carry on your person unless you were hunting, but this can be in your rucksack or your go bag. That's on your person very easily, or you can use a pouch like this or a larger pouch and turn that into your first aid kit. And I'm glad you brought that up. You know the deal, boys and girls. None of this is ever scripted. I had some ideas I wanted to talk to, but I did not know that P-Rick was going to bring that up. And I'm looking at my SWAT T tourniquet right over there that I still have to get out and mess with, and that's a field dressing and a tourniquet, and that fits in the belt pouch very easily. But to Patrick's point, before he gets into the second phase, the second tier, whatever that is, think it through. And, there's all the memes and all the jokes about guys doing EDC and, well, today I'm going to carry lock picking stuff. Maybe we can get a little, what is it? Obsessive compulsive with it. But no, if you're carrying a handgun, absolutely right. I mean, I got my EMT just years ago before the agency, because I was going to school to be a cop. And I'm like, if I'm going to potentially have to shoot somebody, I better know how to fucking save somebody at the same time. Right. So you got to have the gear. You got to know how to use it. And, and I would just add to this, the whole thing is, and some type of tool. I mean, again, your fingers can't undo screws. They can't tighten things. They can't cut, a knife or a multi-tool. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are things you can carry on your person. So first line gear, well, those med kits are phenomenal, and especially small, because the tourniquet's not enough. You're going to need something to pack wounds and maybe an Israeli bandage to wrap it up, right? So you can move on and get to a higher level of care, because it's in our world, and it probably makes sense for everybody else too, is self-aid. Learn how to take care of yourself before moving to buddy aid. So if you've got something that you can manage, and I would, any medical training I've ever had, as far as importance, it far exceeds all the firearms CQB, cool guy training, because it's like, hey, that's what's going to save your life and somebody else's. So I always paid rapt attention to that, and you tried to learn it so well that hey, I want to be able to teach this to somebody else, because I need them to know how to save my life. It was kind of a selfish motivation there, but that's where the importance of the medical piece. Second line gear,
and it's perishable. Just every skill.
That's exactly right. All these are, so keeping these things up to snuff with little practice here and there is important. So if I were there with you right now, Mark, I think we'd be doing NPAs on each other, nasal pharyngeal airways. You know, if anybody's had that done, you know what I'm talking about. But put that little gel in there and you jam it up your buddy's nostril to get an airway. Woo! Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. I actually volunteered for that when we did that in our training.
We had to.
I'm like, oh, I'll do it. I'm not. I've done that before. It's okay, you know. Like, and then of course everybody makes the jokes of like, you know, stupid guys, you know, jokes like, what else have you put up your nose, you know, or like,
yeah,
you know, that
oh, of
stuff.
course,
but,
yeah, a lot of sexual innuendo when you're doing medical training. No doubt about it. That's why I love firefighters, man. They got jokes for days.
All right, go to second because we're at an hour and like, and I think I'm going to modify it, but why don't you go? Let's continue.
Okay.
Yeah, our terminology was a little different, but it's the same concept. So I love where you're going. Let's do that. I think, you know, and then when we kind of wrap it up, I'll just bring it back to a bunch of the other videos we talked about. I don't want to overdo it. And we're not trying to teach a class. We're just trying to use this opportunity and this platform as best we can through all the censorship to hopefully reach one person and maybe hopefully make a difference and somebody gets home safe as a result of it. So continue on, P. Rick.
Yeah, and just get the wheels spinning, right? So
yeah.
You know, so first line gear is what you carry on your person. Second line gear would be, you know, your go bag, or, you know, so to speak, right? Or, you know, if it's a rucksack, if you're in the military, you know, something you're going to carry with you. If you're a lady, hey, guess what? You know, you got a purse. That's your second line gear. You can carry more stuff in there, and most women do. For men, get your MERS. You know, get some kind of cool thing you're going to carry with you all the time and take with you. Maybe it's got your laptop in there. Maybe it's, there you go. There you go. You got all kinds of stuff in there. Note-taking material, medical stuff, you know, extra chargers, all that other good stuff that you're
Licky and Chewy, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe a spare cell phone battery, extra double. Yep.
Yep. All that stuff is big. And then third line gear is when you're going mobile. Now you can carry a lot more third line gear because that's going in your vehicle, something you're going mobile with that you can access. Hey, I got to go back and, you know, get something out of the vehicle. So I have a bigger med kit in my vehicle that's got all the cool stuff that's a little bit too big for me to carry around on a daily basis with my my first line, second line gear. I've got a smaller med kit in my second line gear because I carry that to work every day. And first line, hey, I carry simple stuff like, you know, flashlight, knife, you know, I'll carry a firearm. If I'm going to certain places, I don't always carry it because I don't want to, you know, have to check it and do that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's everything is, there's no right answer for this. It's what works for you, you're going to be comfortable with, and that you can carry all the time. And I like things that like,
and don't forget, just real quickly, but don't forget before you go on but what works for you every time, which means that you can consistently manipulate and do so successfully under a wide variety of environmental situations. Cold weather, hot weather, in a vehicle, standing up, jacket on. You have to be able to, it's got to work for you. Like, you know, so when I was teaching handgun, hey, everybody wants to go to a semi-auto. That's awesome. But if you don't have the forearm and the strength anymore to rack a slide, you know, whichever technique you're going to use, you might want to go to a wheel gun, right? You know, so you've got to find the tool that works for you, and only you can make that decision. They're just tools, as P. Rick said at the very beginning. That's all these things are. Everything we're talking about. That rat tourniquet, you know, if you know, would work great for a lot of people who don't, you know, haven't had that training or under, you know, it's a very simple tourniquet to use, right? As opposed to a cat. Again, I'm not picking on the SWAT T. I've never used it yet, but it's going to be a little bit more complicated. And to me, it seems more of a buddy aid than a self aid, you know, kind of back to your point. So you got to figure out what works for you. And only you know, like, oh, I can't twist my body this far, or I can't rack a slide, or I don't have my knees are shot and I can't run very quickly. So that's got to be factored into your decision-making process and your concentric rings of security. Sorry, P. Rick, that was just, I had to throw that out there where you're going.
No, that's exactly right, man. So, you know, as far as, you know, these things too, I mean, one of the reasons this was designed is because we're going through, you know, foreign airports and stuff like that. If you're carrying a tourniquet and you have to explain this to some customs guy, hey, why do you have a tourniquet? You know, are you expecting some kind of problem in our country? What the hell's going on? Versus this, it's like, hey, this is just strap that I use to keep my stuff, you know, tight, and you know, I got jackets and stuff like that. It looks like webbing, right? So, most people don't have to worry about that problem, but it's one more added benefit. But have everything that you carry have a purpose. Don't carry it just for the sake of like, hey, some cool guy that I like carries it. I mean, like, have something that's going to mean something to you and you're going to be able to use if the time comes. That's why I'm a big fan of anything that has multi-purpose, multi-tool. That hey, you can use this tourniquet for different things. The firearm, if you're going to carry a firearm, what are you doing with your extra mags, or mag, at least one extra mag, right? So you got to have something. What if there's a malfunction? You don't know. So have everything have a purpose. And then the old, age-old infantry saying is like, ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. So don't think that you're going to carry all this stuff every day, especially if you wear a business suit. You're in a professional environment and you're going to be strapped down. That's going to get pretty tiresome. It's going to ruin your clothes pretty quick too, unless you get them specially altered. So,
well, hey, I do have to just do a selfish, shameless plug though. Our everyday carry belt, and then the concealment version that we make for Jacket Black Scout. P-Rick, this is way back in the day when we were talking about doing this on the training side, and then I decided to make the belts. I'm still, all fit and, spry and everything, looking good. I think I was in like, I always forget the name because it's just so funny. I was in a really rich suit, like, not I'm trying to, it always forgets me, a German company. It's kind of the joke that, they made, the uniforms in the movie, the Starship Troopers. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But like I'm wearing a really, really nice suit and I've got one of our belts on, and I used to say, casual, practical, and tactical, but that's just it. So to P-Rick's point, even in that environment, there's nothing that prevents you from, like maybe in your briefcase, having a utility, a Gerber, or a multi-tool. You can still have a pocket folder. You could still have a mini flashlight. You could have a belt that's not just some Dolce & Gabbana or whatever. I'm just making up a name, but, oh, I almost had the name of that, the suits that I used to wear, but, gosh, anyway, but have a belt, like, because then, and especially if it's the concealment belt, that might just be, hey, I had to flee my vehicle, and don't wear hard bottom shoes. Always have soft sole shoes, that's another thing. Like, great, that's a really nice $300 pair of Italian shoes, but you won't be able to run for shit in that. And you're going to slide all over. And as you said, ounces, is pounds, pounds equals pain. Well, hard bottom shoes is pain, over the course of the day, right? Have a soft, comfortable shoe, but then, you just ran away. Yeah. You had to leave your vehicle, but in one of the concealment pouches on, the pockets on your belt, you've got $100 bill. Now you've got cab fare to get your ass home, or to, so like what, somebody just said Armani. It's not Armani, really close. Thanks, Gene. It's not Armani. It was, it's the much more German, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just a suit, but I just wanted to bring that up to Patrick's point, right? So multi-purpose gear, even if you have to have that type of an attire, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. And there's still stuff that you can carry on your first level, on your person, that don't take up, we're not saying you've got like, Batman belt kit on underneath your suit, but you can have some things, even into that environment. So don't just say, well, I work in an office. Man, you're carrying a briefcase. That's your do so, and nowadays, no one even looks twice if you're carrying a ruck, into the office, because they're assuming you got your gym clothes and stuff in there, right? Because you're doing that.
That's it. I'm a huge fan of this, like year round, no matter whether it's wintertime or whatever, because it's a small flashlight. You do that. Automatically somebody gets blinded, sometimes even in daytime, depending on the lighting conditions, and it's got the strike bezel on the front. So it's almost, it's perfect. And I take this thing through the airport all the time because it's a flashlight. Nobody cares. But the reality is it's an awesome self-defense tool. So we use the whole flash and thrash, concept. You blind somebody, bash them in the face a few times, let them deal with that, and then leave. That's the beauty of it. None of this stuff has to be like super overthought.
No, but it does require you to give yourself permission to take a step back and as dispassionately as possible, as objectively as possible, just realize the world you're living in. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people who don't want to admit it. They don't want to talk about, like, you know, again, the coping, the whataboutism is incredible right now. Well, you know, it isn't going to happen to me, or, you know, conservatives did this with Bud Light. I'm like, you're not even listening. You're not, you are so missing the point. And to Patrick, bringing it all the way full circle to the beginning of the conversation, you are mentally checking yourself out. You're already putting yourself even further behind the 8 ball when reality, you know, suddenly jumps out of the car in front of you wearing a mask with a big jacket, not knowing if he's got, you know, a handgun or an asp or bear spray or whatever the F he's going to do to you. So don't let yourself be there. That's really my main thing for tonight. It's so despicable. And I'll just repeat it. If you think that's the way that's protest, or this is legitimate, you're a piece of shit. And if you get caught, you're going to be a felon. I mean, you're going to jail, and that's exactly what needs to happen. And if you harm some innocent person simply because of the car they're driving, you know, I can't even say the words that come to my mind. You know, it's already going to get banned on ScrewTube anyway, but you know, I can't even voice enough how much I am opposed to you, period. You know,
you probably deserve whatever's coming your way, if that's the route you're going to go down, you know?
All right. Hey, we're at a little over an hour, P-Rick. We're not going to do as much as, because there's just too much, but I would beseech everybody, go back. Even if you go to our Mission Critical podcast with me and Redbeard, we had these type of conversations. We've done this over on our Millstone Mondays. And then even when, a matter of fact, and I'll on a different day, I'll give some updates. I don't want to jinx it now, but stay tuned on the Millstone. We'll probably have a pretty good announcement that first Monday in April on some stuff that's going on over there. But we've talked about this stuff in depth, taught it as a class. I mean, Patrick, I think you've even been on and helped me before, where we've done 1, 2, 3 hour segments talking about situational awareness, you know, surveillance detection, physical fitness, you know, like this and that. So I highly encourage, and it doesn't even have to be me. Go find someplace else, but get yourself out of the white, right? You know, like, don't be living in denial right now, you know. And if you're driving that vehicle, you know, I hope, you know, or if you know somebody who has that vehicle, share this video with them. I mean, like, share this video with everybody. Like, you know, these are unfortunately the times we live. And I'm going to end it on a really negative thing to say. Just look around you, right? Just look around you and listen to what people are saying. Listen to what your elected officials are saying right now. It's being promulgated. There's people like my governor, who I did not vote for, thinks it's a joking matter that Tesla stocks are plummeting. Like, and then try to say, oh, I was just joking. No, that guy, he hates you. Like, that's what Thursday's going to be about. They don't care about you, man. As much as you think you're on their side or they're on yours. No, they don't care about you. They don't care. They have no problem talking about destroying an American company and physical violence against people, because it is terrorism. It's, you know, if you don't, you know, sell your car and give us proof, we're going to continue doxing you. That is, by the most basic definition, not even an elevated, ivory tower, you know, academia definition. That's the basic legal definition of terrorism. And that's what's being conducted right now in our country. Someone just said, how do I EDC my beard? That's a damn good question, Dan. I don't know. It's hard. It just stays with me everywhere I go. I don't know what to say.
It's extreme first line gear.
Yeah. He's asking if I got a flashlight, a Leatherman, and a tourniquet in there. And I got a little fifth of Fireball in there too, you know, just because, you know, you might need some, you know, little bump, you know, for medicinal purposes.
Concealment device.
That's right. My personal CD. All right. Patrick, I kind of just made my last kind of comments. I'm going to turn it over to you. You know, take another, 5, 10 minutes, whatever you want, wherever you want to go. And then we'll kind of wrap this up. You know, again, gear, my real fun. You've seen me hold a bunch of stuff up. You know, I make gear. A lot of our gear is multi-purpose. That's why I make it. So it can be used in a multitude of scenarios, a multitude of settings, and it can, help you get through whatever it is that you might be. Hopefully you're just getting through a really fun weekend. That's how it should be. But take these things to heart and start thinking about this and having an adult conversation with your loved ones, your brothers, your sisters, your whomever it is, right? Just take it. And it doesn't have to be my gear, but start thinking about, what if you had to abandon your vehicle? Do you even have, do you have any money? Do you even know? Do you even remember one number? Like, no one even remembers cell phone numbers. Besides 911? I guess if you had a quarter, you could call 911. But, You know, do you even remember one other person's number, cell phone number, right? So just start being serious about this, because this ain't going away. This is not going away. Summer of Love is right around the corner. Patrick, and I'll shut up. Bring it.
Amen.
Leave it to you.
No, I'll wrap it up. You know, as far as everything we talked about tonight, I mean, you know, it's sad that we have to talk about stuff like this, but the reality is that's just the way, you know, the world is nowadays. You've got people, and I love the quote that we've got going down there. You know, hey, I'm a fan of this guy over here, right? So, you know, it's one thing to be, you know, to be a religious person, to have faith, but if you don't understand that there's evil and it's alive and well, and people will actually commit, you know, evil acts, then, you know, you're kind of in denial. You know, you've got to like be involved in the game and not just become a statistic. And I'm not trying to fear monger and saying it's going to happen to every single person, but it's a lot more peaceful going through life, knowing that you've got options and that you've got the ability to take action, and that you've made the conscious decision to protect yourself and your, you know, those around you, than it is to just say, well, you know, but well, I don't know, what if this happens? Because anytime you're doing that, all you're doing is you're kicking the can down the road, and you're not committing to protecting yourself, and you're outsourcing your security to law enforcement, who's going to show up after the event, and basically, you know, do the cleanup, the mop up on aisle 3, and that mop up could include you. So don't let that happen. Be proactive. Start thinking about, you know, number one, engage with society. You know, start looking at people in the face. You know, not mean mugging, not the hairy eyeball. Just notice how people behave nowadays. But then when you get people that are looking back and people that are on the prowl, they'll kind of stand out. That's the first step. Secondly is, hey, give yourself permission that, hey, if there's a violent, you know, event that's going to come my way, it doesn't take a lot of training, but it does take that inherent, like, you know, will to say, no, that's not going to happen to me today, and I'll do whatever the hell I have to get out of here, right? And then finally, start carrying some things that are going to affect your safety and your escape and your survivability, that we've talked about with your first line, second line gear, and that type of stuff, and third line gear, you know, in your vehicle. But think about that stuff, and then, you know, hey, get some training on it, buy some gear. I mean, you know, Mark came from the agency. He understands like the needs and, you know, some of the issues that we had with some of the gear that was issued and that were available to us. And that's why this stuff is so good. It's bomb proof. It's going to last forever. And it's multifunctional. That's the best thing I can ask for in any piece of equipment. So I'll end it right there. And yeah, just say, hey, thanks for everybody who's, you know, listening in or watching.
Yeah, so we're an hour and 15. Everybody, if you can, join us on Thursday, our CLS After Dark. We'll have a panel of guests, and we're going to continue this. We're going to actually look at not just the domestic terrorism being, you know, perpetuated and targeting, you know, Tesla owners, but other kind of issues to really kind of, you know, hopefully bring this point home. Is like, you know, hey man, you know, like, because I've already heard it, the cope is real. Well, what about this? And, you know, oh no, I voted. You know, like, man, crazy people don't give a shit about that. I mean, can you not see that happening around you? And, you know, and look, and I'm not trying to persuade one person one way or the other, but just even look at all the people on social media, just like saying, hey, what the F is this? It's not just me. What I'm trying to do is like, you can make your own political decisions, whether I'm being political or not. I don't care anymore. I'm past that, right? Because it's what's going on in the world is real, and it's only going to get worse before it gets worse. So if I can bring on Patrick and DB and other individuals from our backgrounds, you know, or from similar backgrounds or different backgrounds, Ben, and if we can find a way to share some information that helps you enjoy your time, because a lot of the things we're just talking about here, everybody like, oh, I don't like canteens. They're so military, you know. Yeah, canteens were around probably about the same time or before anyone was ever thinking about having a military. What are you talking about? It's a vessel to carry water, you know? So like a lot of the stuff we just talked about tonight, and thank you very much, Patrick, for sharing your thoughts and coming on. They apply to you're just having a fun weekend in the woods and not being a victim there. You know, how many survival stories start with, oh, I just thought I was going for a short little hike, you know? Hey, that's why it's in the song, a 3-hour cruise. They just thought they were doing a 3-hour cruise, boys and girls. You know, so just keep your head about you, keep your wits about you. get some gear, know how to do it, especially if you've got anything that's going to save a life or take a life. You better be proficient. Don't pass that. Don't ignore that. Oh, I don't need to do that today. No. I mean, you don't get to pick and choose all the time what's going to happen in your 24/7. So, if you're going to carry it and use it, you better know how to use it. Right. So anything else, Patrick, on that?
Nope, that's it. I think we've covered it all, and maybe be able to jump back on Thursday.
I'll talk to you in the after action. Excuse me, in the after action review. I really hope you can. Okay. But all right, hey boys and girls, we're gonna call it a night. We're gonna go do our after action review. Talk about this. Hopefully, we'll see you again on Thursday. What is that? The 27th? Yeah, 27th. Thursday, the 27th at 1800 Central Fake Time. That's what I'm going to call daylight savings. It's just fake time. I'm so sick of daylight savings already. It's so trying to mess with my internal body clock. Screw that. I'm just going to call it fake time. So 1800 Central Daylight Time, which I call fake time. And we're going to sit and we're going to break this stuff down. The title's called They Hate You. And you might be like, what? Come on, Mark. I'm going to bring some receipts. We're going to sit and have an adult table conversation. It isn't just this right here. There's a whole heck of a lot of other stuff that then you tell me what it is then. If it's not just in the embodiment of hatred and disdain and want and disregard for you as a human being, then you tell me what it is, right? And that's what we're going to talk about on Thursday, because summer of love, boys and girls. Summer of love. Here it comes.
Yep.
P-Rick, I wish I was having a beer with you during the summer of love.
We'll see what happens, man. Maybe it's time for a trip up to the Northwoods.
Rock and roll. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks for all the comments in the chat. I didn't really get over to the comments tonight. I wanted to cover a whole hell of a lot more, but again, go see. We've already kind of done this in much greater detail. If this is concerning to you, or if you take it serious, go see those videos. But thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. Next week, we'll get back into reading the comments and doing just straight up gear things. Got some announcements to make and all that. Anyway, hopefully we'll see you on CLS After Dark on Thursday. Continue this adult table conversation, because it's real and it's serious. And somebody is going to get, somebody's going to get, probably killed, if not seriously injured. And I'm not even sure, judging what I'm seeing right now, if that's going to be enough to wake people up from the stupor of like, what the F are we doing? What we're doing. We're killing people over the cars they drive. Like, I don't know if that's going to be enough to wake us up. I kind of got a feeling we've got a lot farther to fall here still. Husky Bunch just joined in late. Good night, y'all. I'm sure it was an informative show. Well, Husky Bunch, sorry that you came in late, but, check it out afterwards. And that'll be my final comment. Thanks to everybody once again for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you found something informative. This was not trying to be entertainment. This was educational. And, well, maybe we'll do more of these, because there's so many other stories, real world stories that I know Patrick can share and I could share of why this is important. And that's not just two dudes with, one guy with an awesome beard, the other guy with, a good smile and a very sexy, voice, instructor voice. No, these are real world things. And if we can share them with you and if it can help out, that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's time to just go full steam ahead with that for at least, till we can round this corner, we can dig ourselves out of this. And like P. Rick said, hey, you don't have to be a Christian, but that guy back there, come on, man. Do you not have any faith? Do you not believe in anything? This is what we're going to do to our fellow man. No, we got to get better. Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully see you on Thursday. Patrick, again, I'll give you, we'll be here in a second here. Still. Okay. So thanks to everybody. We'll see you on Thursday. I hope you enjoyed it. I know a little bit of a downer, but it's got to be talked about. We have to talk about it. All right. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. We'll see you on Thursday, boys and girls. Woo!